What if everything you call your personality is actually a defense mechanism? Not a gift, not your essence, but a shield, built piece by piece just to survive what they told you the world was. Have you ever stopped to wonder, maybe the way you are was never really a choice? Maybe you learned to be fast so you wouldn't be left behind, to be strong so you wouldn't be humiliated, or to be logical because feeling was just too dangerous. As a child, you watched the world and absorbed one simple rule. If I act like this, they love me. If I act differently, they push me away. So without even realizing, you built yourself into a character. Consistent, adaptable, acceptable. But what cost? Have you ever wondered why some moments drain you for no clear reason? Why some decisions feel impossible, even when they make sense? Why there's a part of you that quietly just wants to disappear? Maybe you're not in conflict with. Maybe you're in conflict with the part of you that was silenced just to fit in. Today, we're going to dive into a truth no one ever told you. You were shaped, trimmed, tailored, but your original soul is still there, waiting, resisting, whispering. This video isn't about personality types. It's about what exists before any label. It's about reclaiming the part of you that got hidden, before you learned to hide. If this resonates with you, consider subscribing and turning on notifications, because what we're about to reveal isn't just knowledge. It's the key to stepping out of the persona and finally coming home. We like to believe we know ourselves. This is just who I am. I've always been like this. I overthink everything. I'm a math person. I'm just really sensitive. But who taught you to describe yourself that way? Have you ever considered that these labels you repeat didn't come from within you, but were picked up one by one as you grew? When Carl Jung studied the human mind, he uncovered something that still unsettles those who dare to look deeper. Much of what we call I is actually programming. You were rewarded or punished not for who you were, but for how much you matched what others expected. If you were logical, they called you smart. If you showed emotion, maybe they said you were weak. If you were practical, they gave you responsibilities. If you dreamed too much, they told you to get real. And so, without even realizing it, you drifted further and further from your real self. You became what worked. But what works doesn't always fulfill. Jung believed that each of us is born with a natural way of seeing the world, a personal filter of perception. Some people think more clearly when they feel. Some feel more deep. Some stay grounded in the present. Others see what's not there yet. And all of these ways are valid. They are complementary. But here's the issue. Society doesn't value all types equally. It values what produces results, what can be measured, what fits the mold, and what doesn't fit gets rejected. Maybe that's why you feel that strange discomfort, like something in you is out of place, even when everything on paper looks fine. Maybe you're trying to live using just one part of your mind, while ignoring the parts that could make you feel whole. Yes, you do have a dominant mental function, but that's not the only one. In fact, relying on just that part is like trying to run with one leg. It works, but it's exhausting, inefficient, limiting. What Jung proposed, and what most people miss, is that the path to becoming whole is not about doubling down on your strengths. It's about reclaiming the parts of you. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. From now on, you'll learn about the functions of your mind, not as a test, not as a label, but as a compass. To understand why some tasks drain you, while others feel effortless. To see why certain relationships leave you depleted and others make you feel at home. To discover deep down who you really are when no one else is watching. So what about you? Are you really ready to know yourself? Or would you rather keep living the role they taught you to call you? Imagine a brilliant kid, the kind that takes toys apart just to see how they work. In school, he's praised for thinking like an adult. He learns early that emotions get in the way, that crying is weakness, that feeling is a distraction. So he masters logic, calculates everything, controls everything. Years later, he becomes a respected professional. He solves problems with precision, makes decisions that impress. But inside, something. Achievements don't excite him anymore. Mornings feel heavy. Nights are restless. He keeps doing everything right, but it feels like something essential got lost along the way. This is the cost of a mind that works perfectly but feels nothing. Jung saw this pattern. He called it ego inflation. When one part of the mind dominates so much, it crushes the others. Thought becomes a tyrant, and emotion becomes a threat. But the problem was never thinking too much. The problem is thinking alone. The answer isn't to abandon logic. It's to realize that logic alone isn't enough. What looks right on paper might be wrong for the soul. Feeling isn't irrational, it's essential. Because a life without emotional connection becomes unbearably logical. Now picture the opposite. Someone who feels everything, deeply, intensely, completely. A child who senses the mood of the room before a word is spoken. But growing up, they were called too much, overly emotional, weak. So they learned to hide their sensitivity, build walls, suppress what they feel, because feeling too deeply made others uncomfortable. They grow up trying to adapt. They become functional, but carry an internal buzz, a restlessness that never quiets. Because sensitivity, when ignored, doesn't die. It becomes anxiety, insomnia, a body screaming what the mind learned to silence. The world needs those who feel deeply. They're the ones who notice what others miss, who perceive subtle shifts, who cry at beauty, not just pain. But when that gift turns to burden, life starts to lose its spunk, and slowly they begin to believe that they're the problem, when the real issue was learning to silence what made them human. While some drown in feeling, others drown in urgency, always busy, always moving, always chasing the next step, the next plan, the next possibility. Their mind lives in the future, and their body, exhausted, tries to keep up. They're admired, productive people, but chronically disconnected. They eat without tasting, speak without listening. They're everywhere and nowhere. Jung saw this in those dominated by extroverted intuition, people always hunting for possibilities, but forgetting how to be here. They mistake movement for purpose. They collect goals, but forget to ask, why? The one thing the mind can't simulate is real presence. Being here, breathing fully, feeling the texture of now, walking with awareness, letting the moment be enough. And then, there are those stuck in the past, anchored in routines, comfort zones, what's familiar. They remember everything, value tradition, trust what's been tested. They create security through repetition, but eventually, that security becomes a cage. They stop taking risks, stop evolving. Because for someone who lives through memory, the unknown can feel like a th. Without noticing, they begin reliving recycled versions of the same day, the same thoughts, the same fears. That's when life starts to feel stagnant. And here's the crucial point. When the mind fixates on only one way of operating, whether it's feeling, thinking, imagining, or remembering, it becomes unbalanced. It loses its ability to integrate. And what was once a strength becomes a limitation. Have you ever felt that way? Like you're doing everything right, but something's still missing. That emptiness isn't failure. It's a signal, a call. Something inside is trying to surface. And that something is the part of your mind you've spent your life avoiding. Jung called it the inferior function, the psychic process you were taught to distrust, the one that feels foreign, disruptive, but that secretly holds the peace you've been missing all along. The thinker who avoids feeling, the intuitive who rejects the present, the empath who fears conflict, the planner who resists change. All of them carry a blind spot. And when that blind spot is ignored, it becomes pain. It becomes self-sabotage. It becomes a loop. And the wildest part? The more you try to suppress that part of yourself, the more life keeps putting you in situations where only that part can save you. The mind wants to repeat. The soul wants to expand. It's not enough to be logical. You need to feel. It's not enough to feel. You need to understand. It's not enough to dream. You need to act. It's not enough to remember. You need to evolve. Maybe your suffering isn't a mistake. Maybe it's a push, a message, a chance to integrate what got left behind, to reclaim the part of you that's been there all along, just waiting for space to breathe again. The truth is, no one was born incomplete, but nearly everyone learned to live half of who they are. And now, it's time to name the missing half. Carl Jung discovered that every human mind operates through 4 essential functions, 4 ways of perceiving and interacting with the world: thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. Thinking is the logic filter. It seeks structure, clarity, coherence. People who lead with this function prioritize systems and truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Feeling is the values filter. It guides you through inner alignment, connection, and empathy. Feelers care about harmony and doing what feels right to them, not just what makes sense. Sensation is the reality filter. It focuses on what's concrete, observable, present. Sensors trust their 5 senses, live in the now, and thrive on practicality. Intuition is the possibility filter. It looks beyond what's visible. Intuitives pick up patterns, symbols, meanings. They imagine what could be, often before anyone else sees it. We all have all 4 functions, but one of them dominates, like your B. The others support or remain dormant, and that's where the tension lies. The next step is to understand how these 4 functions operate in both introverted and extroverted forms. How to identify your dominant one, and, most importantly, how to find balance without becoming someone you're not. It's not about changing who you are. It's about stopping the lie that a part of you doesn't exist. Now that you understand that your mind has 4 different ways of operating: thinking, feeling, sensing, and intuition, it's time to see how these actually show up in real life. But to do that, we need to take it a step further. Jung discovered that each of these 4 functions can express itself in 2 distinct ways: outward-facing, known as extroverted, or inward-facing, known as introverted. This gives us 8 different ways of perceiving and processing reality, and each one shapes completely how you think, feel, act, choose, love, suffer, and respond. Some people fit the type known as extroverted thinking. They organize the external world with precision. They want results, efficiency, structure. They operate on ideas of what works, and if it doesn't, it needs to change. They excel at making fast decisions, managing projects, and streamlining systems. But they can sometimes come across as cold, impatient, or even insensitive when others bring emotions or uncertainty into the picture. For them, feeling doesn't solve problems, solving does. Others live within introverted thinking. They aren't satisfied with works fine. They have to know why it works. They strip down ideas to their core truth. They investigate, analyze, and understand complex systems. But they can appear distant, indecisive, trapped in theory. What matters to them isn't convincing others. It's being in peace with their own internal logic. There are also those led by extroverted feeling. These individuals read the room as if it's its own language. They sense discomfort before it's spoken. They shape their communication to create harmony. They know what to say, when, and to whom. But they risk forgetting themselves. They spend energy pleasing, seeking approval, losing boundaries. They shine socially, but suffer in silence. On the flip side, introverted feeling people live by an internal moral code. They have non-negotiable values. They feel deeply but rarely show it. They create art, causes movements. They remain true even when no one else understands. But by guarding what they feel, they can seem cold, distant, or even arrogant, when they are, in fact, protecting something precious. Extroverted sensing types live in the here and now with all 5 senses heightened. They see everything, hear everything, feel everything. They love novelty, texture, flavor, visuals. They're practical, quick, and present. But they can become impulsive, craving constant stimulation, stuck in the immediate, often struggling to see the long-term consequences. Meanwhile, introverted sensing people are deeply rooted in memory. They hold vivid details, associated feelings, meaningful experiences no one else recalls. They trust what has been tried and tested. They value tradition, routine, and stability. But they can struggle with change, cling to the familiar, freeze when life demands spontaneity. Then there's extroverted intuition, always restless and inventive. They see patterns others don't. They get excited easily, connect ideas, shift direction with speed. They shine in innovation, creativity, and brainstorming. But they risk jumping from one idea to the next without finishing any. They live in a sea of what-ifs, but often struggle to anchor those dreams into reality. Finally, introverted intuition is the most mysterious type. Their mind is silent but intense. They live from insights that seem to appear out of nowhere. They often just know what's coming, not by magic, but because of deep, unconscious processing. Their intuition is like an internal compass pointing toward a future only they see. Yet they often struggle to articulate how they arrived there, which leads to misunderstanding or underestimation. If any of these descriptions made you think, wow, that feels like me, that's precisely the beauty of Jung's discovery. It's not about labeling. It's about identifying mental patterns that were already within you, just waiting for names. You might wonder, okay, I understand these 8 functions, but how do I figure out which one is mine? Here's a simple way. Observe what feels natural to you, not what you've learned to do well. Ask yourself, what energizes me even when I'm tired? What feels effortless? Next, notice what you avoid. Is there a task that seems easy for others, but exhausting to you? That's often your inferior function trying to emerge. Also, pay attention to your most frequent conflicts. Do you clash with people who embody your opposite function? Think. A thinker annoyed with emotion, an intuitive frustrated by practicality, a feeling type uneasy with logic, a sensor overwhelmed by possibility. One powerful tool is to look back to your childhood. Before societal expectations shaped you, what did you do for pure joy? Did you invent stories and imaginary worlds? That points to intuition. Loved exploring how things worked? That's thinking. Pursued deep emotional connection? Feeling. Found comfort in familiar routines and sensory details? Sensation. Remember, your dominant function isn't just something you do well. It's what you need to feel whole. It's not about performance. It's about identity. Jung taught that our psyche has a hierarchy of functions. The dominant one forms the foundation of how we operate. The auxiliary helps bring balance, like a thinker with feeling, so they're not purely logical. The tertiary shows up later in life. And the inferior, often neglected, holds untapped growth potential and resides at the root of your greatest challenges. This matters because most deep emotional struggles, chronic conflicts, and stagnation come from a part of you that's been repressed. And it's usually tied to that inferior function. But when you integrate it, not by rejecting it, but by learning to listen, you begin to see real change. You begin making decisions with more balance, communicating with clarity, understanding relationships more deeply, breaking patterns you couldn't explain before. And above all, starting to feel whole again. Because here lies Jung's most profound invitation. This isn't about becoming an ideal version of yourself. It's about shedding a limited version. Integrating your functions won't turn you into someone else. It will make you fully. It's not about rejecting your logic. It's about letting emotion in. Not about abandoning your dreams. It's about learning to act on them. Not about dismissing your nature. It's about expanding it. This is true psychological freedom. You've spent your life trying to understand yourself based on what you were taught. But maybe no one ever showed you how your mind actually works. Now that things are becoming a little clearer, do you think you were encouraged to be who you are, or shaped to be what others expected? Maybe the next video that pops up here will help you go even deeper on that journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.